I like a good smelly cheese. I like one that really frightens people at the checkout in the supermarket.
Hi, I'm Kayla.
And I'm Pete, and welcome to How I Hobby.
We're two pals and hobby obsessives with over 100 hobbies between us.
And we're always on the lookout for more.
Join us as we talk about all of our hobbies.
And talk to people we know about their really cool hobbies.
Welcome to How I Hobby. In today's episode, we've got a great interview with Brendan Girak, whose hobby definitely has wheels. But first, Pete, how do you hobby?
I'll tell you how I hobby, Kayla.
Tell me, Pete, tell me.
I do geocaching.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is that?
Geocaching is essentially treasure hunting for nerds.
Okay.
It's all around the world.
Yep.
People have hidden various sizes of little things that you can find.
Cool.
And you can get on an app, the geocaching app.
Yep.
Go to geocaching.com. And you can download like the coordinates of where these things are, and you go out and you find it, and then there'll be a little thing in there. Sometimes it's just a little tube with a piece of paper in it, and you just sign your name, where you're from maybe, the date that you found it, and then you put it back. Other things, they might have like larger things where you can like swap a token of some sort, or you could like leave a little present for the next person to find it and all that sort of stuff. But it's great. And it's a bit like, do you remember Pokemon Go?
That's what I was just about to say. Is this like gotta catch 'em all Pokemon?
It is a bit like that. Now, I'd never got into that. I was too old for Pokemon when it came out and then too tired for it when Pokemon Go came out.
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same thing. You're just like, it's just a way of getting out and going on a walk somewhere and then finding something cool, and you're just like, oh God, I found this secret thing in a secret place.
Oh my God.
And it's really fun.
How long has geocaching been around?
Now, that's an excellent question. I don't know, but I will overdub how long it has been a thing right now.
Geocaching, as we know it today, started on the 3rd of May 2000 when GPS enthusiast Dave Ulmer decided to test the accuracy of these brand new GPS satellites and hid a container in Beaver Creek, Oregon, and encouraged other enthusiasts to try and find it.
Well, that's an interesting answer. And how did you get into this in the first place?
Do you know, I don't know. I think I came across it when I was actually researching for this, because this is a really recent hobby. This is probably my newest hobby.
Okay.
And I came across it when I was researching unusual hobbies for the podcast.
Yeah.
And geocaching came up, and I had heard of it.
Yeah.
And I looked into it. I'm like, oh, God, this is really cool. I enjoy walking.
Yeah.
I enjoy the fresh air.
Yeah.
But I don't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And so this is a really cool way to
Motivation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just sort of gamifies going for a walk, essentially.
That's really cool.
And it is really lovely. And I've found I've been to places in my local area that I've never seen before that are really lovely, and like little side street with like a lovely little house, bit of architecture, lovely thing by the river, and it's just a really lovely way of getting about, seeing a bit more of your local area, being a bit more adventurous with it.
I love that. Final question for you, Pete. Mm-hmm. Where does the name come from? As someone who loves words and the history and origin of words.
Yes.
Geocaching, what does that mean?
So geo is an old Greek word meaning earth, essentially, so it's earth. And a cache is a hidden, like a hiding place.
Oh my God, that is so cool.
Little hidden hidey places in the earth, which is really, really cool.
That is so cool, which is the same as when you clear the cache on your browser.
Exactly, because that's where you hide the things that you don't want people to see.
How interesting. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, nature, being outside, treasure hunting, modern day explorer.
You approve.
And with that, let's go to our episode.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Brendan Girak is a teacher from Perth, Australia. He dabbles in many things, including cricket and running, and he is also a passionate knitter who sells his very popular patterns online. Brendan, how do you hobby?
I do cheesemaking.
Cool!
Cheesemaking. Fantastic.
How did you get into cheesemaking? And what does cheesemaking mean to you?
Well, I guess I kind of got into cheesemaking just on a whim. I've always been interested in experimenting with different, cuisines, types of cooking, and I've never been someone who's a measurer or a baker or something like that. And I think that's where cheesemaking is different to what I'd normally do. But I found it quite interesting, and I saw something online, and then just gave it a shot, I guess. And then I saw some results, turned out pretty good, and then continued with that.
Cool. Brendan, what kind of cheese do you make?
So I started off with camembert.
Yeah.
And that was quite successful. I got some little, I guess, kits just from a brew shop, like a cheese and brew shop. And then I gave that a go, did quite well. And then I tried cheddar. And at the moment, I think the cheddar is probably 5 months old.
Whoa.
And that's kind of like, I don't know how it's doing. I've waxed it. But yeah, and then I tried brie. That didn't do too well. And I tried blue cheese, and that did not do well at all. So camembert and cheddar. But also where I'm living, our neighbours, she was a commercial cheesemaker. She was making Gouda. Maybe I got a bit of inspiration from her. I bought some wax off her for my cheddar, and then she gave me a few moulds as well. So, yeah, at the start I was just mucking around, and then kind of got a little bit of inspiration / a reality check.
Yeah.
Cheesemaking should be very strict,
Yeah.
and I'm not.
Well, I guess you're self-taught, right? You're self-taught plus some Googling, which I guess is still self-taught, but you're self-taught and you got a bit of advice from your neighbor who is an expert. Because, I thought that cheesemaking was very much the science. And if you kind of screw up the science, you could actually get really ill.
Yeah, I definitely, the blue cheeses started to look a bit like pinkish with a bit of blue. So that was not...
Maybe, this might be a good thing. You might have just discovered a whole new strain of cheese, a whole new, you've created a whole new cheese. Pink cheese.
Pink cheese.
Brilliant.
I don't think that's the good stuff. But
Well, it's in time for Valentine's Day, so that's okay.
Yeah.
If you want to maim or injure your Valentine, then go ahead. But I quite like mine, so I'm gonna leave that blue cheese.
Okay, yeah. We'll put a disclaimer up. Do not eat pink cheese at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, but it is, very much a science, and I think that's, I guess, a little bit where I struggle. I skip steps at times, and I think that's probably where some of my cheeses have gone not so great. But I do kind of like that idea of experimenting, trying new things, and I'm very impatient. So if it doesn't work this time, try it again the next time and see how we go.
If it doesn't work, your house doesn't fall down. It's your leg doesn't fall off. That's the beauty of a hobby. It's okay to screw things up. Just don't eat it.
Don't eat it. Yeah, fine.
Yeah. So just very briefly, what is the cheese making process? Just on the whole, what do we go through?
Well, go to the shops, grab some milk, heat that to 40-odd degrees Celsius. I think you might use Fahrenheit, do you?
No, Celsius.
Celsius is good.
But you use miles and not kilometres, right?
Yeah, that's the only weird thing about being here in England. What happens next?
You add a bit of the culture, I think. Let that kind of sit for an hour, and then you add the rennet, and that's the rennet curdles it. Take the curds away from the whey. I'm pretty sure it's the whey. Mm-hmm. And then once you have the solid curds, you just put them in a little container. If it's camembert, you just let it drain out, switch it over, let it drain out, switch it over, drain out, drain out, drain out. If it's cheddar, you kind of press it. But the thing is, cheese making, it's like there's a couple of degrees between a camembert and a cheddar. The process itself is very much similar. That's what I kind of found.
So my mum was doing cheese making, and she was making cheese in our basement, in our laundry room, because the temperature in there was such that it was like the right kind of environment for it. So where do you make cheese in your house?
Yeah, all the temperatures have to be but I just did it in the house, and like
I love it.
That's
like anywhere specific, or like under your bed, then also in the bathroom, then also in the shed. Like
it was just a small house with like a loft that we lived upstairs in the loft, and then it was kitchen joined with living room. And I can't really control the temperature there, so I just gave it a go. Like, I think following rules is important, but I also wanted to try out cheese making, so
I love that. I love this the sort of renegade approach. If you were getting annoyed because you weren't following all the steps and your cheese wasn't working, then that would be a problem. But you're like, I'm not following all the steps, so I know that sometimes it's not going to work out, and I'm cool with that. And that's the great attitude.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
100% agree with you. Like, you have to accept that if you don't follow the rules, it might go a little bit different. If you do follow the rules and it goes wrong, then sometimes you might have to find a new set of rules or something like that. But yeah, I'm definitely accepting of my experimental kind of nature.
So with the cheese making, right? So you talked about like the rennet, you talked about the mold and the squeezing out the moisture and such. So then a period of time goes by where I'm assuming it's sort of like fermentation happens, and then the cheese is ready. And then what?
With camembert, the little white mold hangs out, like comes out, develops, and then inside, I assume that something goes on where it starts to eat some of the curds, and that's where it gets like milky.
Yeah.
At the start, it's going to be solid. The longer you leave it, the creamier it gets, because I think there must be something eating it.
Yeah.
So the camembert is, I think, 3-week aging. But with the cheddar, you're meant to age it in a cheese cave. And I never had a cheese cave, so I left it in the fridge. But I think I've also played with it a bit too much to the point where I don't know if it's actually that good anymore.
What do your friends and family think about this new hobby of cheese making?
I don't know. I think Dad is very much into making his, like, he does dried meats and stuff like that.
Oh,
and
wow.
my mum's more of a, she's from Macedonia, so she's more of like a heartier meals, I guess, like what people would eat in villages and stuff without money and stuff like that. So they're pretty supportive. Mates-wise, yeah, I think they've enjoyed the cheeses that I've made at times. I think I get a bit nervous because it's like, I don't know what's going to be in that camembert, how it's going to taste.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, shit, I'm going to have to pick this up, try it myself, and be like, okay, it's edible enough for you guys to eat as well.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing for me. It's like, what's it actually going to taste like?
Yeah.
Because I have had really nice ones, and then at times it's like, oh, geez, like, I don't think you guys should eat this. And like, then taste this.
Oh, Brendan. When it comes to cheese, I mean, it takes a lot of time. There's like a methodical element, which then you pepper in this like renegade approach, which I think is absolutely hilarious.
Renegade
and so
cheese.
Fun. Renegade cheese. That could be the new brand. Renegade cheese by Brendan. Is it an expensive hobby though? I mean, like, you got some of the cultures from your neighbor. Like, is this expensive to do apart from time consuming?
Well, cheese itself is expensive. So I think that was kind of my attitude, like the cultures and all that stuff. They weren't too expensive. The time factor isn't like a huge thing because I'd be knitting whilst doing the cheese. So like the time factor isn't huge. Like, it's not like, oh, that's all I'm doing. I'm just watching them.
You're not watching the cheese for 4 weeks.
That is a very, very good segue.
Yeah.
Very natural segue, Brendan,
Yes.
to knitting as a hobby turned career for you, right? So this is like, we're chatting to you about cheese making. Knitting, for our audience who's watching on YouTube, there is a beautiful array of yarn behind Brendan. He's
Yeah.
also wearing a beautiful, what I would call probably toque, because I'm
A
Canadian.
toque. You see, I'd call it a duck because I'm from the northeast.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I thought you were saying duck, but
No.
we'll just move on from that.
Let's move on.
I just
Fine.
call it a beanie.
A
Beanie,
beanie.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So
That's fine.
henceforth, Brendan is wearing a beanie
Yeah.
that he knitted himself.
Yeah.
Or he knit himself. We've chatted about cheese. So cool, because you've been cheese making now for a few months. It sounds like you're approaching it. I really like this renegade approach to life, because based on, we've chatted already. It sounds like that was kind of your entry into knitting as well. Was this kind of throw caution to the wind, knit at my own accord? Like, let's have a bit of knit chat.
Yeah.
I started knitting because I would watch test match cricket and it just goes on for hours.
Love it.
I like watching cricket, but it's like, what am I going to do whilst I'm doing that? I need to do something productive. Then I started learning how to knit, took that kind of renegade approach where it's like trial and error, made so many mistakes. And then just grew from there. And now it just turned into like, oh, I'm watching TV. I can be knitting. And it's just something to take up my time. And I think the trial and error comes from the fact that I really I don't struggle to read. I struggle to comprehend what I'm reading because I got ADHD, so I'm just reading something, but it's just skipping all the details. And it's like when you got a pattern, it's like you're meant to be reading it line for line. And I'm just like one line and then I'll skip and then I'll have to go back to the other line. And it's just really in my head, I'm like, oh, so if I design it, then I know what's going on. I don't know. The knitting keeps my hands busy, keeps me like mentally, I guess, a bit more focused. And it's turned into, I wouldn't say career as such. It is, I don't know. It's not a huge money making scheme because I'm just, it is my hobby and my passion, and it's turned into that. Yeah. And I'm scared to monetize something that I really enjoy, and that's given me.
So you're sort of selling stuff, selling your patterns and stuff as just kind of because you can. And I've seen, you've done videos on Instagram with things like that, but you're not like focusing on it as, yes, I need to make this my main income or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I think I would like it to be my main income, but I sell designs because there was a demand for the design. So it was kind of like I gave in to people's pressure as such. I think it's also a good thing for me to do personally.
Yeah.
I started studying teaching because of the knitting as well. So it's given me a lot of things. Well, I started teaching kids how to knit, and I was like, oh, this is a good career in terms of like flexibility and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just a relief teacher, but it gives that, opportunity to be flexible. But yeah, I would like to turn it into something.
The piece about turning it in, monetizing something, anytime I've thought about how I could monetize a real interest, I've actually completely lost interest entirely.
Yeah.
And so, it's like interesting to hear you talk about that as your journey from knitting and perhaps your future of Renegade Cheeses by Brendan.
Yeah.
Because how the monetization has played a role in like your, affinity towards it.
Yeah, it stops being fun once it becomes work. So it's a cliche, but it's true.
Yeah. We've been chatting about your knitting for a few minutes now, and for those who are listening, but perhaps not watching, that may not recognize your voice, but would recognize your face, please remind us all, who are you on Instagram?
So it's Knitwits and Yarns.
Knitwits and Yarns.
Yes.
You're famous, mate. My sister loves your all your content because you knit everywhere. You're like knitting as you're walking, and you're like knitting as you're sitting, and you're like knitting
on the treadmill. That was insane. That video's fantastic.
Knitting on the treadmill. If we go back to cheesemaking, and we've heard a bit about like this renegade approach to life, what has cheesemaking as an additive hobby for you? What has that taught you about yourself and life?
That probably I do have the ability to follow instructions.
Cool.
Mostly.
Yeah.
And a bit more patience and stuff like that. I think patience.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that there's some things, if you are neurodiverse.
Yeah.
And you might look at a hobby and think, oh God, maybe that's not for me.
Yeah.
But you've kind of found a way to make it work for you, which I think is really, really cool. You just make it fit in with what you want to do and what you feel like you can do, and then just see how it goes. I think it's brilliant. All right, so Brendan, you have 30 seconds to convince our listeners to try cheesemaking.
Yeah, what would you say?
Go.
I think it's an interesting thing. You can watch it grow. You can watch it change. It tastes good if you can get it right. And I think ultimately, like that's the main thing. Like being able to try and share what you've made with other people. I think that's quite a cool thing to do. There's not too many barriers to enter. Just give it a go. You can make some mozzarella. That's the probably easiest stuff to make. So
yum.
You can start from there.
Cool.
I did make mozzarella.
Oh yeah.
Healthy, but it was tasty.
Cool.
Excellent.
Brendan, this was so cool. Thank you so much for coming. I think what I absolutely loved about chatting to you is meeting someone else who also has so many hobbies. And it's something where like one hobby sparks another hobby, which I find so relatable and inspiring. And also I think this whole like renegade approach to things, you said, yes, if you follow the rules, it's, more guaranteed to work out. And if you don't, then you kind of have to like be okay with it not turning out. I think there's something really special about when you're not following the rules and something turns out really well, and perhaps you've actually cracked a code. And I really like this like philosophy that I've taken from you, which is like life is all about trial and error. Yeah. So whether you apply that to your personal life, your hobbies, your professional life, it really is about kind of experimentation. So thank you for like that energy, which was so fun. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes. Brendan, where can people find you online?
Yes.
So pretty much mostly exclusively knitting because that's what I do, nitwits and yarns. But I did post a few things about my cheese on my threads, but nitwits and yarns is where you find me. Yeah.
Well, we'll post your threads. Everybody follow Brendan on threads and on Instagram. It's all down here. And keep updated for more news on his other fantastic hobbies.
Yeah. Brendan, thank you so much. We hope you had a blast. And we'll chat soon.
Yeah.
Toodles!
That was our interview with Brendan Girak. We had a blast. Hope you did too.
But before we go, we want to share this week's celebrity hobby. Drum roll!
Did you know Claudia Schiffer collects insects?
Wow!
Yep.
Wow!
Yeah.
Blast from the past.
Yeah, still got it.
And that's a wrap.
I've been Pete.
And I've been Kayla.
Rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes us much easier to find.
And follow us on Instagram at howihobby.
Did you know we also have a newsletter?
I did! Subscribe for new episodes and behind-the-scenes chat.
See you next time.
Toodles!
How I Hobby was written and produced by Kayla Lean and Pete Falconer, with music and editing by Pete Falconer, artwork by Laura Walsh, and animation by Kayla Lean. If you'd like to be featured on the show, email us at howihobby@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at howihobby, or sign up to our mailing list at howihobby.com.